Reggie had the same ritual before bed every night. Shower at 8, pajamas on at 8:10, white noise machine on at 8:15, sleep mask on at 8:30, weighted blanket pulled up to his chin at 8:35, eyes closed, and thinking peaceful thoughts by 8:45. All this was so he could be in the most receptive state by 8:45, so he could slip into the door dream. Reggie had been having the door dream since he was a kid. Kids he knew had weird dreams. Tommy Terry had told him that he dreamed he was a spaceman in a ship made out of macaroni. But Reggie only ever had the one dream. In the dream, he was floating in space, and there was a weird cord, something he would later learn was called an umbilical cord, stretching from his stomach out into space. It was like an astronaut's oxygen line, but Reggie didn't have a spacesuit. Reggie in the dreams was always naked. That would have been a little scary to a kid his age, but it seemed normal in the dream. He just floated out into oblivion, and eventually he came to the door. The door, capital D, was sitting on a little planet. The planet was so small that Reggie could have walked around it in 6 long strides. The planet was green with dirt and a little grass, but it was hardly the most important thing there. No, the most important thing there was the door. The door stood about 18 or 20 feet tall, and it was wider than Reggie could stretch both arms out, even as an adult. At first, the door had scared Reggie. He had tried to jump back out into space and get away from it. He could do that. He had done that for a while. But after returning to the door night after night, Reggie got curious. He remembered the first night he had gone to stand beside it. The first night he had heard the whispers. The whispers should have scared him too. It made the hairs climb up on his neck, but as he edged closer to the door, he realized it wasn't the scary whispers like his brother's horror movies had. It wasn't even the mean whispers that grown-ups did sometimes. It was whispering stories, the kind of stories Mom sometimes read at bedtime. It wasn't stories about the Berenstein Bears or Little Critter, though. These were stories like Treasure Island or King Arthur and his knights. Reggie went from being scared to enthralled as he listened, and he came back every night for more stories. Then, one day, he used one of the stories for Mrs. Macy's writing class. She loved it. She praised his creativity, and Reggie decided from then on to use more of them. There were never any consequences. No one ever accused him of plagiarism as he wrote. Reggie discovered that he could add little things to make them his own, too. The stories were amazing and so vast and well done, and as Reggie grew up, the stories grew with him. Soon, it wasn't just school assignments. Reggie was submitting the stories to magazines, to contests, and even expanding them into books. He didn't blow up overnight, but his stories on Reddit and on other smaller writing communities gained him a following. People were hungry for his work, long before he was on the shelves of Barnes & Noble or Amazon, and his star only grew as he continued to write. Reggie, however, never thought of himself as a writer. Reggie was chronicling the stories he heard when he slept. "How do you do it, Reggie?" Klein asked one afternoon as they ate lunch outside of Manny's Bar and Grill. "How do you consistently turn out these amazing stories?" Manny had the best barbecue in the city, in Reggie's opinion, and as he wiped grease off his chin and sauce off his collar, he shrugged. "I sleep, mostly." Klein raised an eyebrow at him. "Sleep? That's your big advice for a struggling writer?" Klein was a playwright, and he'd been having a lot of trouble finishing his latest opus. "Yep," Reggie said, through a mouthful of rib meat. "A good night's sleep and the right dreams, I suppose." Klein raised an eyebrow. "What exactly do you mean by that?" Reggie went right on eating, not in a big hurry to share his process. He had never told anyone about the door, no one he could remember anyway. He'd always been very careful about it, not wanting anyone else to find out. What if one night he just showed up and there was a group of people there stealing his stories? Reggie couldn't have that. He had a very cushy life thanks to these stories, and he wanted to keep it that way. Klein blew out a breath. I hate when you do that. Do what? Reggie asked, laughing. You guard your process so closely. You always have. We've been friends since college, Reggie. I don't know about you, but that means something to me. If you were in a pickle like this, I'd sure share my process with you. Reggie rolled his eyes. Klein could be so dramatic, but when he told him so, Klein made a disgusted noise and stormed off. Suit yourself, Reginald, but when I am homeless and living on the street, you will have only yourself to blame when you have to eat brunch alone. Reggie shook his head and went back to eating. His process was no one's business but his own, and no matter how much he liked Klein, he wouldn't risk it. He needed the door, was wholly dependent on the door, and he couldn't keep his quota without it. If ever Reggie had been a real writer, it was now gone. These days, he was little more than a ventriloquist who listened to a very talented dummy. Reggie was at his apartment later, writing the sequel to his latest ode opera, when someone knocked. It was Klein again, and he was a mess. Klein was always kind of dramatic and ostentatious, but today he looked like a raccoon caught in the rain. He'd been crying, that much was obvious, and his usually well-coiffed hair was a mess. Reggie invited him in, putting his tale of two cowboys seeking their opportunity in the Sierra Nevadas aside, and asked him what was going on. The more he reflected on his outburst at brunch, the less it seemed like the usual melodrama from his friend. Mr. Caspian has given me an ultimatum, he sniffed, and suddenly Reggie got it. Victor Caspian, head of the Thespian Society, and grade A bastard, was one of the biggest contributors to the arts in the borough. He was also the one who organized the spring and fall production, and could be extremely temperamental. He and Klein had a love-hate relationship, but Klein often depended on Mr. Caspian, buying his scripts so he could pay his bills and fund his lifestyle of starving avant-garde socialite. He says if my play isn't ready by the end of the week, then he won't be using my work for the spring production. Reggie shrugged. Well, there's always the fall production. Klein shot him a dark look. What he said was he wouldn't be using it for any production. A black mark from Victor Caspian could ruin me. I need his patronage, Reggie. Help me, please. Reggie shook his head, though not in negation. Klein, you know I'm not good at stage plays. How much do you lack being done? Just the end, Klein said, nearly leaping to his feet. I just have the ending number and the closing to write, and it's done. The problem is that when it comes to the closer, I can't figure out how to come up with it. I need help, Reggie. Please, help me out. What do you want me to do? Reggie asked, not patronizingly, but serious. I know less about songwriting than playwriting, and that's saying something. Well, you were talking technique earlier. Help me with my technique. You write so much, Reggie. Where does it all come from? Maybe if I could get into that headspace, I could come up with an ending. Please, Reggie, I'm desperate here. Reggie put his head in his hands. Screw it. Maybe if only Klein knew about it, then it wouldn't be so bad. Klein and he could share it, so long as Klein kept his damn mouth shut. Klein would do that much. Reggie had to believe that. He didn't think he'd blab about it. It's not really a process. I really do just get ideas in my sleep. Klein started to get up in a huff, clearly thinking he was being pushed off, but Reggie grabbed his arm and drew him back down. Look, sleeping is exactly what I do for my process. Remember how you're always fussing at me because I don't stay up late for parties all the time? Yes, Klein said testily. It usually means I have to go with Tanya, and you know what a bore she is. Well, I do it because I often get my best ideas in my dreams. I lie down, and my mind just wanders off as I sleep. It goes to a peaceful place, and I find my stories there. It's nothing technical. It's nothing I'm taking or using. It's just sleep. Klein looked skeptical. His face softened a little as he realized that Reggie was being serious. Is that all? Just sleep? Well, Reggie said, deciding to share a little more, picture something that gives you the stories. Like what? Klein asked, leaning in closer. Reggie leaned in closer too, not wanting anyone to hear. Well, ever since I was a kid, mine's always been a big door. It's like someone, or lots of someones, are whispering the stories under the door. I make little changes, and I make them my own. Klein smirked, expecting Reggie to scoff and say he was teasing. But when he didn't, Klein's smirk slipped off. You're serious, aren't you? Reggie nodded and took him to see his process, even offered to let him use his bed if he wanted to. Klein took it all in, looking slightly skeptical, but he agreed. He went through Reggie's routine, bedded down while the sun was still a line on the horizon, and Reggie went to sleep on the couch. There was no door for him that night, but when Reggie saw Klein the next day, the man looked changed. He looked like Scrooge at the end of A Christmas Carol. He looked changed, and not entirely for the better. I understand now, he half whispered. I see what needs to be done now. Klein, Reggie said. He didn't think the man was going to stop for a moment. You can't tell anyone about this. Uh-huh, he said, but Reggie got up and stopped him before he could leave. Kleinhammer Marshall, and his actual name seemed to snap him out of it a little bit. You cannot tell a soul about this door. Do you understand? No one. Not a person. Klein looked up at him. Reggie didn't doubt the words that he said. Of course not. I don't want anyone else to know about this. It could ruin it. Reggie nodded, content in the knowledge that Klein would keep his secret. Klein kept it all right. He kept it till the day he died. That year's spring production was masterful, but it wasn't what Reggie had been looking at whenever Klein showed him snippets of what he was working on. It was a dark comedy, almost devoid of song and leaning heavily into the surreal. Caspian loved it, couldn't praise Klein enough, and Reggie began to notice that Klein went out less and less at night. When he asked about the play, Klein said he had scrapped what he had been working on and wrote the new piece in a 48-hour frantic pace. It was what the door said I should write, he said, his voice taking on a hollow sound when he spoke about it. Reggie kept using the door, noticing no negative effects from talking about it, and he didn't think much about it again until the Seattle conference, 3 years after Klein wrote his award-winning play. He was sitting in the dining area of the Marriott Hotel, taking advantage of their continental breakfast, before another day of convention panels, when a man came to sit with him. You're Reginald Foster, he said, offering a hand. It's a pleasure. I'm Jeffrey Dost. Reggie nearly spat eggs on the man. Really? The Jeffrey Dost, who wrote the Crystal Tower series. He wanted to call BS, but the man did look like the photo on the back of the book. If the guy was cosplaying, then he was doing a damn good job. One and the same. I wanted to talk to you about something that might sound a little weird. Reggie swallowed and nodded slowly. Sure, whatever you want. I wish I had my copy of Drassel's Step. I'd love an autograph. I've got one in the back of my car. If you'll give me 20 minutes, I'll sign it for you tonight if you like. I have a feeling we're going to be at the same convention after all. Reggie laughed, but something in the old man's face told him he wasn't likely to want the book later. Something told him that despite meeting his idol, a man whose books had been a backdrop for his childhood, he wasn't going to like what Mr. Doss had to say. I'll just come right out and ask it, Mr. Doss said, steepling his fingers. You've seen the door, haven't you? Whatever Reggie had been expecting him to say, it wasn't that. How do you know about the door? He asked, unable to stop himself. Lots of us do. Quite a few of us have seen the door. It speaks to us, and we use its stories to make comfortable livings for ourselves. I love your books, but the second I started reading them, I could tell that you had seen and heard it. You've done well, like most of us, but I have to warn you that taking them comes with a price. A price? Reggie asked, not sure what he meant. The door doesn't tell you, but those stories aren't free. I didn't understand it either. Not until my friend Leonard died. Leon Rothschild, he paused. And when Reggie didn't show recognition, he went on. Got a lot of his stories from the door. He wrote most of his series that way, and he was a celebrated sci-fi writer for decades. He was my writing mentor. A man who took me under his wing and showed me the ropes. And when he died, I was distraught. I didn't write for nearly a year, but it wasn't until I went back to the door that I noticed the change. I was listening to the whispers at the door when I heard him. He stopped, his face getting that look that people associate with seeing ghosts. He was there, behind the door. I could hear him, telling me the stories he never got to tell. I called his name, asked him how he was in there, but he wouldn't say anything, except the stories the door wanted him to tell. After that, I started listening closer. Have you ever heard of Earl Bean? Of course. He wrote the minor-major novels that were popular in the 70s, Reggie said. I recognized his voice, too. I was watching an old interview of his for a highlight reel, and I realized that he was the one who was telling me the Crystal Tower stories since I was 20 years old. He was the voice that gave them to me. And there were others, too. So many others in there. And they just keep growing. I heard Edward Carter in there the other day. Tracy Morris, too. I've heard so many others, old friends and people I admired. And I knew then that I had to help people. Help? Reggie asked. How would you? It doesn't seem to matter. It does, though, Mr. Doss said. I hope it does, at least. I think that maybe if you stop using it, then your time in it becomes less. I don't know. It's difficult to say. I stopped using the door about 6 years ago, right after Leon died. I have friends, however, who refuse to stop. One of them told me that he can't hear Leon anymore. I remember him saying that Leon would only use the door when he was really stumped, so maybe he only used it sparingly. Regardless, I just thought you should be warned, he said, getting up and collecting his cup. Whether you use it or not, it seems like the right thing to do. He spent the weekend thinking about what Doss had said, but the real surprise was waiting for him when he got back. The voicemail when he got off the plane was tragic. Klein had been in a car accident, a bad one, and he hadn't made it. He died about halfway through Reggie's flight, and that was when it all came home for Reggie. What if Doss had been right? What if Reggie went to that door and heard his old friend Klein telling him stories? He was sitting in bed that night, the ritual of starting ingrained, but as he lay awake in his bed, Reggie didn't think he could do it. He lay there that night, waiting for sleep, dreading what voices he might hear from that massive door. If you should see that door in your own dreams tonight, what voices might speak to you from beneath it? Should you listen? Would you pay the price?
Good evening, everyone. It's me, Dr. Plague. Thank you so much for joining us for tonight's show.
If you think you might like a little more spooky in your life, then please feel free to click on one of the videos we have up here. Maybe look at one of the playlists if you're trying to get caught up. I know, there's so many videos on the channel. There's so many series that are going at the same time. Sometimes you just need a little refresher course, and I gotta say, I always enjoy the views. If you're not subscribed, feel free to hit that subscribe button. Maybe hit the bell so you don't miss anything. We upload a lot on this channel, so you won't want to miss a single story as they come out. If you'd like to support the channel, you can click on the Amazon link down there. There's quite a few books in my Amazon account. You can have a look, and if you'd like a signed copy, get up with me through email, and I'll be happy to work something out with you. Also, there's links to my Patreon, and you can become a member on the channel if you'd like your spooky a little bit early. Patrons and members on the $5 tier get their videos 12 hours early. That's in the morning as opposed to in the evening. Patrons at the $10 level also get a signed copy of my book anytime I write one. Speaking of my patrons, you should see them appearing right now. Just wanted to take a minute to say how much I appreciate all of you. Patrons, subscribers, however you give to the channel. I really appreciate everything you do, and it truly touches me that you have chosen to support the channel in this way. Well, that's enough for now. Till next time, Dr. Plague, signing off. Have a wonderful evening.